Welcome back. I've had to take a couple days off of reading. I've got a hankering for coming back here to my camera and reading. And I've got Janie with me, and we're gonna keep reading. And I think last time, whoa, where are we? Where are we at? Mrs. Gardner. Everybody just wants to know. Okay, Caroline Bingley is what a mess. What a mess she is. I also have been saying Derbyshire wrong. It's Derbyshire. I just started watching the Pride and Prejudice TV mini series. It's on Amazon right now for free, and it's the one with Colin Firth. And I will say, I think the 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice did a better job of having Darcy be a little more pining, to use this language. He did it a little bit more like, so what do you suggest for getting to know somebody? Like he was really practice, but Darcy's very good at being very standoffish in the Colin Firth version. Like not so good at pining, just very good at brooding, I'd say. So that's a big difference I see. I do like the idea of a really short book being a mini series. That's kind of interesting. Like they did a good job of fitting everything into a movie, but definitely it's like a little more accurate to the actual text. The mini series, I think they had time to just make it a little bit more the chunky experience of it all. And the way that Elizabeth Bennet was played in the mini series definitely led more to like the sarcastic, ironic, satirical tone that I think Jane was trying to get. But the Keira Knightley version is beautiful. The music is a little bit more stunning. I actually started to hear in the mini series, like, did I hear that the 2005 version kind of took a tiny little itty bit of inspiration from that mini series? Maybe, maybe not. I kind of heard a little bit of similarity. But the music in the Keira Knightley was so good. The casting is so good. The mom in the 1995 version was just, it was very much this and Mr. Bingley and how can you even be on my nerves? You know, it was very like everybody seemed a little bit more caricature. I don't want to offend anybody because I know but compared to the 2005 version, everybody just seemed more like a real person in the 2005 version. Even Mr. Collins in the 1995 version was played by just this man, and he was very everything was really like yes, yes, very dramatic and caricature-ish. To me, this is my opinion. To me, it just seems like the Keira Knightley version. Nobody can do it wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. That's not true. Um, Back into the book, back into the text. Let's start. They just finished Mr. Gardner and Mrs. Gardner and Elizabeth just left, and right after they left this dinner party or tea, meeting Miss Bingley, Miss Darcy, golly, Carolyn Bingley just ripped Elizabeth new. It was shocking. I felt shocked. Okay, chapter 46. Elizabeth had been a good deal disappointed in not finding a letter from Jane on their first arrival at Lambton, and this disappointment had been renewed on each of the mornings that had now been spent there, but on the third her repining was over, and her sister justified by the receipt of two letters from her at once, on one of which was marked, I haven't been reading this for the last 2 days, so now coming back into it, it's like I have to like turn my Jane Austen brain back on. Oh, also in the 1995 version, one of the girls played Mozart, and I was like, wait, Mozart like had just died, right? Like, was he really that well known across Europe, like right after he died? I would think that, I don't know, it was just interesting to me. I was like, wait, is this Rachmaninoff? No, it's Mozart. Why is she playing Mozart? Like, I just had no idea that Mozart was like so well known right after he died. Anyway, I'm gonna start over because I gotta get my Jane Austen. You're in the 1700s. You're in the 1700s, early 1800s. Elizabeth had been a good deal disappointed in not finding a letter from Jane on their first arrival at Lambton, and this disappointment had been renewed on each of the mornings that had now been spent there, but on the third her repining was over, and her sister justified by the receipt of 2 letters from her at once, on one of which was marked that it had been missent elsewhere. She's been waiting for a letter. It's finally come. One of them was missent, so everything is fine. Elizabeth was not surprised at it, as Jane had written the direction remarkably ill. She said, why is your penmanship so bad on this one? That's funny. And again, how did the post people work back then? It was really just get your fastest horses. Whoa, I wonder if the fastest horses were for like mail and military. Oh, interesting. They had just been preparing to walk as the letters came in, and her uncle and aunt. Yeah, I need to keep going every day and reading every single day so that I can remember. It's uncle and aunt, not aunt and uncle. Why do we say aunt and uncle now? Okay. You can do this. They had just been preparing to walk as the letters came in, and her uncle and aunt, leaving her to enjoy them in quiet, set off by themselves. The one missent must first be attended to. It had been written 5 days ago. The beginning contained an account of all their little parties and engagements, blah, 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 with such news as the country afforded, but the latter half, which was dated a day later, and written in evident agitation, gave more important intelligence. It was to this effect. Oh, this is when Lydia's missing. Okay, sorry, spoiler alert. Lydia is wilding out with these officers. Since writing okay, this is the letter. Since writing the above, dearest Lizzie, something has occurred of a most unexpected and serious nature, but I'm afraid of alarming you. Be assured that we are all well. What I have to say relates to poor Lydia. An express came at 12 last night, just as we were all gone to bed, from Colonel Forster, to inform us that she was gone off to Scotland with one of his officers to own the truth with Wickham. Wickham and Lydia, the most despicable man in the world. Imagine our surprise. To Kitty, however, it does not seem so wholly unexpected. I'm very, very sorry. So imprudent a match on both sides, but I'm willing to hope the best, and that his character has been misunderstood. Thoughtless and indiscreet, I can easily believe him, but his step, and let us rejoice over it, marks nothing bad at heart. Oh, Jane. His choice is disinterested, at least, for he must know my father can give her nothing. Her poor mother is sadly grieved. My father bears it better. How thankful am I that we never let them know what has been said against him. We must forget ourselves. So they never let anybody know that Wickham is a trifling ass bee, you know? They never let anybody know that what had happened between him and Darcy, and now I did think in the TV version, the BBC miniseries, that Lydia was played by Helena Bonham Carter, and my mom did too. But we found out that it was not her; it was some other actress who did really good at being perhaps even more obnoxious than the Lydia in the 2005 version. We were just like, I know this girl and she needs to be stopped. And yeah, but there is, like, Helena Bonham Carter's third cousin once removed was played Mr. Bingley. So weird. Third cousin once removed, first cousin 3 times, no, third cousin once removed was cousin to Helena Bonham Carter, played Mr. Bingley. What a trip. Oh my God, Lydia. Okay, how thankful we are. Yeah, but maybe you guys should have told somebody. They were off Saturday night about 12, as is conjectured, but they were not missed till yesterday morning at 8. The express was sent off directly. My dear Lizzie, they must have passed within 10 miles of us. Colonel Foster gives us reason to expect him here sooner. Lydia left a few lines for his wife, informing her of their intention. I must conclude, for I cannot be long from my poor mother. I'm afraid you will not be able to make it out, but I hardly know what I have written. Without allowing herself time, and that's the end of the letter. Okay. Without allowing herself time for consideration and scarcely knowing what she felt, Elizabeth, on finishing this letter, instantly seized the other and, opening it with the utmost impatience, read as follows. It had been written a day later than the conclusion of the first. Okay, another letter. Here we go. From Jane. By this time, my dear sister, you have received my hurried letter. I wish this may be more intelligible, but though not confined for time, my head is so bewildered that I cannot answer for being coherent. I'm not going to make any sense, because I'm strapped for time, little young lady. My dearest Lizzie, I hardly know what I would write, but I have bad news for you, and it cannot be delayed. Imprudent as the marriage between Mr. Wickham and our poor Lydia would be, we are now anxious to be assured that it has taken place, for there is but too much reason to fear they are not gone to Scotland. She's just out there whoring around, it sounds like. Colonel Foster came yesterday, having left Brighton the day before, not many hours after the express, though Lydia's short letter to Mrs. F. gave them to understand that they were going to Gretna Green. Something was dropped by Denny, expressing his belief that W. Wickham never intended to go there or to marry Lydia at all, which was repeated to Colonel Foster, who, instantly taking the alarm, set off from B, intending to trace their route. Brighton. I think the B means Brighton. He did trace them easily to Clapham, but no further, for on entering that place they removed into a hackney coach and dismissed the chaise that brought them from Epsom, like Epsom salts. Are Epsom salts from Epsom, England? I have no looking up device today, so I will have to get back to all of us about. I'd love to look up a hackney coach if I haven't already. I don't think I have. And Epsom salts? Okay. All that is known after this, that they were seen to continue to the London road. I know not what to think. After making every possible inquiry on that side London, Colonel Foster came to Hertfordshire, anxiously renewing them at all the turnpikes and at the inns in Barnet and Hatfield, without any success. No such people had been seen to pass through. With the kindest concern, he came to Longbourn and broke his apprehensions to us in a manner most creditable to his heart. Mr. Colonel Foster, I am sincerely grieved for him and Mrs. Foster, but no one can throw any blame on them. Our distress, my dear Lizzie, is very great. My father and mother believe the worst, but I cannot think so ill of him. Sure. Many circumstances might make it more eligible for them to be married privately in town than to pursue or ton. I wonder if they say ton, like in Bridgerton. Privately in town, than to pursue their first plan, and even if he could form such a design against young women of Lydia's connections, which is not likely, can I suppose her so lost to everything? She's going to go off with this young man, and she's lost to everything. Wow. Impossible! I grieve to find, however, that Colonel Foster is not disposed to depend upon their marriage. He shook his head when I expressed my hopes. Not looking good, kid, not looking good. And said he feared W. Wickham was not a man to be trusted. Thanks for telling us now. My poor mother is really ill and keeps to her room. Could she exert herself, it would be better, but this is not to be expected. She can't exert herself at all. And as to my father, I never in my life saw him so affected. Elizabeth did warn him, though. Elizabeth said she is going to be the ruin of us all. And he said she needs to be dropped down a peg or two. And now look what happened. Poor Kitty has anger for having concealed their attachment, but as it was a matter of confidence, one cannot wonder. I am truly glad, dearest Lizzie, that you have been spared something of these distressing scenes. But now, as the first shock is over, shall I own that I long for your return. I am not so selfish, however, as to press for it, if convenient. Adieu. Dramatic letter. You can't spell out Wickham, you say W, but you do say adieu. I take up my pen again to do what I have just told you I would not, but circumstances are such that I cannot help earnestly begging you all to come here as soon as possible. I know my dear uncle and aunt so well that I am not afraid of requesting it, though I still have something more to ask of the former. Uncle. My father is going to London with Colonel Forster instantly to try to discover her. What he means to do, I am sure I know not, but his excessive distress will not allow him to pursue any measure in the best and safest way. Oof. And Colonel Forster is obliged to be at Brighton again tomorrow evening. Dad's going out with a bayonet. He's going out with a bayonet. He's out to murder. And Colonel Foster's like, I gotta go. You're on your own, old man. In such an exigence? I do have to write that down, and I will look it up tomorrow. Exigence. Is that like, Exodus? Exigence. Like Exodus. My uncle's advice and assistance would be everything in the world. He will immediately comprehend what I must feel and rely upon his goodness. This is distressing. Oh, where is my uncle? I'm being Mrs. Bennet. Where is my uncle? Cried Elizabeth, darting from her seat as she finished the letter, in eagerness to follow him without losing a moment of time so precious. But as she reached the door, it was opened by a servant, and Mr. Darcy appeared. Oof! Her pale face and impetuous manner made him start, and before he could recover himself to speak, she, in whose mind every idea was superseded by Lydia's situation, hastily exclaimed, I beg your pardon, I must leave you. I must find Mr. Gardiner this moment on business that cannot be delayed. I have not an instant to lose. Good God, what is the matter? He cried, with more feeling than politeness. Then, recollecting himself, I will not detain you a minute, but let me, or let the servant go after Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner. You are not well enough. You cannot go yourself. Elizabeth hesitated, but her knees trembled under her. She felt how little would be gained by her attempting to pursue them. Calling back the servant, therefore, she commissioned him, though in so breathless an accent as made her almost unintelligible, to fetch his master and mistress home instantly. On his quitting the room, she sat down, unable to support herself, and looking so miserably ill that it was impossible for Darcy to leave her, or to refrain from saying, in a tone of gentleness and commiseration, Let me call your maid. Is there nothing you could take to give you present relief? A glass of wine? Shall I get you one? You are very ill. I love that alcohol is our go-to. I know that I don't drink anymore, so I am on my little soapbox, but I was on a plane one time and I was miserable and I don't remember why, but I was not in a good, happy mood. And the flight attendant came over and she said, Are you okay? I was like looking out the window and she like tapped me on the shoulder and was like, Girl, are you okay? And I was like, I just can't wait to be out of the sky. Like, I cannot wait to not be in a plane anymore. I think I was coming home from Florida, and it was just the longest day. I know that I'm complaining about it, and there's people in the military who've probably been up for at least 52 hours and are saving the world, but I did feel terrible. I couldn't wait to get just down. Just get me down. And she's like, There's nothing we can do much about that, but do you want a shot of vodka? I was like, that, madam, is probably the last thing. Like, have you guys ever been hungover in the air, in a plane, in a pressurized cabin? It's the worst. And I'm sure the vodka would have been fun and it would have kind of brightened my spirits, but I was like, do you have anything else that you could offer? Like, can I get a glass of water? I don't know. It was just like, sorry. He was just offering her a glass of wine and it was very cute. And I did turn it into like a wine. I know that they probably just use whiskey for babies' teeth and stuff like, it was just like such a thing back then. But my God, can we get over it? I would never have thought that I would be a part of Prohibition, but I probably would be now. Sorry. Terrible. She said, "No, I thank you," she replied, endeavouring to recover herself. "There is nothing the matter with me. I am quite well. I am only distressed in some dreadful news which I have just received from Longbourn." She burst into tears as she alluded to it, and for a few minutes could not speak another word. Darcy, in wretched suspense, could only say something indistinctly of his concerns, and observe her in compassionate silence. Way to stay down in the trenches with her, Darcy. That's very sweet. At length she spoke again. "I've just had a letter from Jane, with such dreadful news. It cannot be concealed from anyone. My younger sister has left all her friends, has eloped, has thrown herself into the power of Mr. Wickham. They are gone off together from Brighton. You know him too well to doubt the rest. She has no money, no connections, nothing can tempt him to. She is lost forever." God. Darcy was fixed in astonishment. "When I consider," she added in a yet more agitated voice, "that I might have prevented it, I who knew what he was, had I explained some part of it only, some part of what I had learnt to my own family, had his character been known, this could not have happened, but it is all too late now." "I am grieved indeed," cried Darcy, "grieved, shocked. But it is certain, absolutely certain?" "Oh, yes, they left Brighton together on Sunday night, and were traced almost to London, but not beyond. They are certainly not gone to Scotland." "And what has been done, what has been attempted to recover her?" "My father has gone to London, and Jane has written to beg my uncle's immediate assistance, and we shall be off, I hope, in a half an hour. But nothing can be done. I know very well that nothing can be done. How is such a man to be worked on? How are they even to be discovered? I have not the smallest hope. It is every way horrible." Darcy shook his head in silent acquiescence. "When my eyes were opened to his real character, oh, had I known what I thought, what I dared to do, but I knew not. I was afraid of doing too much. Wretched, wretched mistake." Did Darcy say that? Oh, maybe that was Lizzie. Lizzie might have said that, because Darcy made no answer. Okay, sorry. Pretend I did Lizzie's voice, which is just like Darcy's voice, except higher, womanly. Audible people are, I'm, now that I'm doing this out loud and not just reading in my head, because your head, you can be like, there's an old British man in my head, obviously. But yeah, doing it out loud is a much different thing, and congrats to all Audible readers who can really, like Fourth Wing. I couldn't believe that the woman reading the book could do a man's voice so well. I was like, he's kind of hot. But it's the chick. Am I in love with a chick doing a man's voice? Whoa. Okay, sorry. Darcy made no answer to Elizabeth, who was just talking. He seemed scarcely to hear her, and was walking up and down the room in earnest meditation, his brow contracted, his air gloomy. Elizabeth soon observed and instantly understood it. Her power was sinking. Everything must sink under such a proof of family weakness, such an assurance of the deepest disgrace. She's like, I'm so glad that I didn't accept Darcy's hand, and now all this is happening. He's probably relieved. He's probably actually relieved after hearing this that I didn't accept his hand. Right. Disgrace. She could neither wonder nor condemn, but the belief of his self-conquest brought nothing consolatory to her bosom, afforded no palliation of her distress. It was, on the contrary, exactly calculated to make her understand her own wishes, and never had she so honestly felt that she could have loved him as now, when all love must be vain. She had never been so honestly felt that she could have loved him. What? It was, on the contrary, exactly calculated to make her understand her own. Never had she so honestly felt that she could have loved him. It's like a double negative, but it's not, and I'm just... When all love must be vain. Yeah. Who wants to think about love at a time like this, when everything's terrible, I guess? But self, though it would intrude, could not engross her. Lydia, the humiliation, the misery she was bringing on all of them, soon swallowed up every private care, and covering her face with a handkerchief, Elizabeth was soon lost to everything else. And after a pause of several minutes, was only recalled to a sense of her situation by the voice of her companion, who in a manner which, though it spoke compassion, spoke likewise restraint, said, "I am afraid you have been long desiring my absence, nor have I anything to plead in excuse for my stay, but real, though unavailing concern. Would to heaven that anything could be either said or done on my part that might offer consolation to such distress. But I will not torment you with vain wishes, which may seem purposely to ask for your thanks. This unfortunate affair will, I fear, prevent my sister's having the pleasure of seeing you at Pemberley today." He's like concerned that she's not going to see his sister. Oh, yes, be so kind as to apologize for us to Miss Darcy. Say that urgent business calls us home immediately. Conceal the unhappy truth as long as it is possible. I know it cannot be long. He readily assured her of his secrecy, again which is very sweet. That is sweet. I feel like back in the day, people are like, screw you and your family, I'm telling everyone, or I don't know. That just, I get the feeling that secrecy is like a privilege. Again expressed his sorrow for her distress, wished it a happier conclusion than there was at present reason to hope, and leaving his compliments for her relations with only one serious parting look, went away. Ooh, he said, one serious parting look. He loves her, even despite all this. As he quitted the room, Elizabeth felt how improbable it was that they should ever see each other again on such terms of cordiality as had marked their several meetings in Derbyshire. Sorry, everybody who's English. Why does this feel like cultural appropriation? I feel like English people are going to be like, you're ruining it. It's cultural appreciation, I promise you, and I'm happy to learn. And Corps, Marine Corps, C-O-R-P-S. My mom did say that is pronounced core, and I know that it is, but pronouncing the P in that word when you see it is like you have to pronounce it, and I don't really remember what is that corporation? The Marine Corporation? I'm going to look up what that word actually means, and I am embarrassed that I don't know. Derbyshire. And as she threw a retrospective glance over the whole of their acquaintance, so full of contradictions and varieties, sighed at the perverseness of those feelings which would now have promoted its continuance and would formerly have rejoiced in its termination. I think that she's saying what I was just saying about how Darcy just said that he loved her even though her family sucks, and she was like, no, I'm not going to marry you. And he's like, now he's probably like, okay, good, I'm glad we didn't get married because this is embarrassing. If gratitude and esteem are good foundations of affection, Elizabeth's change of sentiment will be neither improbable nor faulty. But if otherwise, if regard springing from such sources, my brain's melting. But if otherwise, if regard springing from such sources is unreasonable or unnatural, in comparison of what is so often described as arising on a first interview with its objects, And even before 2 words have been exchanged, nothing can be said in her defense except that she had given somewhat of a trial to the latter method in her partiality for Wickham, and that its ill success might, perhaps, authorize her to seek the other less interesting mode of attachment. You guys, that was all one sentence, and I don't know what it means. If gratitude and esteem are good foundations of affections, Elizabeth's change of sentiment will be neither improbable nor faulty. And then this is a whole sentence. I'm going to read it one more time. But if otherwise, if regard springing from such sources is unreasonable or unnatural, in comparison of what is so often described as arising on first interview with its object, and even before 2 words have been exchanged, nothing can be said in her defense, except that she had given somewhat of a trial to the latter method in her partiality for Wickham, and that its ill success might perhaps authorize her to seek the other less interesting mode of attachment. What chapter is this? I'm just gonna write that down. We're gonna analyze this and get back to you guys. 46. I don't know what I just read, or why I don't know what it means. Somebody help! Somebody help me! I need help today. But that as it may, be that as it may. So I'm just starting to read like this because this is what I feel like, kind of like, I don't get it. Be that as it may, she saw him go with regret, and in his early example of what Lydia's infamy must produce, found additional anguish as she reflected on that wretched business. Never since reading Jane's second letter had she entertained a hope of Wickham's meaning to marry her. No one but Jane, she thought, could flatter herself with such an expectation. Surprise was the least of her feelings on this development. While the contents of her first letter remained in her mind, she was all surprise, all astonishment that Wickham should marry a girl whom it was impossible he could marry for money. I'm like rocking back and forth to like soothe myself right now. And how Lydia could ever have attached him had appeared incomprehensible. But now it was all too natural. For such an attachment as this, she might have sufficient charms. And though she did not suppose Lydia to be deliberately engaging in an elopement without the intention of marriage, she had no difficulty in believing that neither her virtue nor her understanding would preserve her from falling an easy prey. She is a foolish girl. I'm getting it, but I'm not getting like the deeper, like there's no way for me to like deeply understand. But on superficial level, I'm getting it. She is a silly girl that doesn't comprehend what she's doing. And she's an easy prey for a target like Wickham. Okay. She had never perceived while the regiment was in Hertfordshire that Lydia had any partiality for him. And even in the BBC show, she was like, Denny! I love Denny! She was all about Denny. But she was convinced that Lydia wanted only encouragement to attach herself to anybody. She said, I need attention from anybody. I have 5 sisters. My dad is absolutely absent. I need attachment to anybody. Sometimes one officer, sometimes another, had been her favorite, as the attentions raised them in her opinion. Her affections had continually been fluctuating, but never without an object. Right, I get it. The mischief of neglect and mistaken indulgences towards such a girl, oh, how acutely did she now feel it. She was wild to be at home, to hear, to see, to be upon the spot, to share with Jane in the cares that must now fall wholly upon her in a family so deranged. A father absent, a mother incapable of exertion, of requiring constant attendance, and though almost persuaded that nothing could be done for Lydia, her uncle's interference seemed of the utmost importance. Until he entered the room, her impatience was severe. Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner had hurried back in alarm, supposing by the servant's account that their niece was taken suddenly ill, but satisfying them instantly on that head, she eagerly communicated the cause of her summons, reading the 2 letters aloud. Wow, that's and dwelling on the postscript of the last with trembling energy, though Lydia had never been a favourite with them. Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner could not but be deeply afflicted. Not only Lydia, but all were concerned in it. And after the first exclamations of surprise and horror, Mr. Gardiner promised every assistance in his power. Elizabeth, though expecting nothing no less, thanked him with tears of gratitude, and all three being actuated by one spirit, everything relating to their journey was speedily settled. They were to be off as soon as possible. "But what is to be done about Pemberley?" cried Mrs. Gardiner. "John told us Mr. Darcy was here when you sent for us. Was it so?" "Yes, and I told him we should not be able to keep our engagement. That is settled." What is all settled?" repeated the other, as she ran to her room to prepare. "And are they upon such terms as for her to disclose the real truth? Oh, that I knew how it was!" But wishes were in vain, or at least could only serve to amuse her in the hurry and confusion of the falling hour. Had Elizabeth been at leisure to be idle, she would have remained certain that all employment was impossible to one so wretched as herself. But she had her share of business as well as her aunt, and amongst the rest were notes to be written to all their friends at Lantern, with false excuses for their sudden departure. An hour, however, saw the whole completed, and Mr. Gardiner meanwhile having settled his account at the inn, nothing remained to be done but to go. And Elizabeth, after all the misery of the morning, found herself, in a shorter space of time than she could have supposed, seated in a carriage and on the road to Longbourn to save the day from Mr. Wickham and his terrible decisions, and Lydia and her terrible decisions, and thank goodness for Darcy, and thank goodness for Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, uncle and aunt. Wow. That was dramatic, and that was a tough read for me today, everybody. And we'll be back next time. We're going to look up exigence, and we're also going to look up where the word corpse is. I know I should know. Marine Corps Corporation. I don't remember. We'll just need to refresh my memory on that. And we also need to understand what the heck, if there was any sort of digging deeper that I could do on that one paragraph that really got me. Thanks for reading. Thanks for watching. Thanks for reading along if you are. Thanks for being here with me during this fun reading. And I have decided, with my mother's help, that I will read Sense and Sensibility next. And I'm not excited to finish this book because I want to take my time and finish it in its own time. And really marinate in it for a little bit. So thanks again, everybody. Happy reading. Ta-ta.